TTS.com.
Hello, and welcome back to the Open Debate. I'm your host, Elder, and I will be here with you this evening, this morning, this afternoon, whatever time you choose to be tuning in to this live stream. And so, what do we have on the agenda for today? Well, another deep dive into Vice's insightful wisdom that they consider themselves to be. Clearly I am not a beacon of wisdom, but I am a simple man here to bring forth conversation. As I began setting up today's stream, I noticed that I was going to be speaking on a topic that Vice had deemed only acceptable for women, apparently, to speak of. As you can see, there are... Where's the screen for you? Up there. There are only women on the screen. But, nonetheless, I am still willing to have a conversation and give my opinion. Also, if you would like to give your opinion, I'll leave a link in the chat below. But you can donate through, what is this here? Streamlabs. And have whatever you say pop up on stream, so it would look something like this. And I'll put the link in the...
This is a test donation for $CA.
Right? It'll make me shut up and... listen to what you have to say. So I'll put the link in the description below right now for you, and then we'll get going on with the stream. Yeah, so essentially what I've been doing here on the channel is just going about talking to you all as though we're here in the debate room. Vice seems to have a lot of debates, and since I'm not invited, I thought I would invite myself. And yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing here today. If you haven't seen this debate, it's Conservatives and Progressives Debate Feminism, put out by Vice. And yeah, alright, let's dive into it and give our opinion. I'd love to hear what you have to say, so let's keep the conversation going, and boys and girls, let's get into it.
The only time I've ever been attacked was by liberal women. I find that liberals are some of the most intolerant people. One of my friends got punched in the face at UC Berkeley just because he was tabling with a conservative organization. You see this happening all the time.
Vice versa.
And vice versa.
And vice versa.
I've never
that's
die
the
for
thing.
being people of
People
color all the
people of
time.
color die.
Like, not punch in the face, but like dead.
So I'm Dee Nasty. I'm a comedian and a host here for Vice as well. So the word feminism, it affects people differently. This is why we wanted to have an eclectic group of women, both on the progressive side and the conservative side, to discuss feminism and what that means to you. So,
I have a quick question. Are you allowed to cuss?
pardon me?
Are you allowed to cuss?
You can.
Let's have a discussion. A discussion that's serious. A serious, heated debate. And the first question is, are we allowed to cuss? Are we allowed to freely express ourselves? I think this is going to be a little bit hard to watch, boys and girls.
That just frees it up, you know?
You can. All right, so by a show of hands, who here identifies as a feminist? Okay, cool. I'm just going to go by and I'm going to ask everyone.
I definitely do not identify as a modern day feminist. If you want to take the classic, do you believe in equal rights for all genders? Who doesn't? Are you ridiculous? Do you live in Western society? But the way that things are currently being portrayed and the way that the movement has been pushed towards the left-leaning agenda, especially throughout the media, I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of getting things done, fixing problems. So let's have those hard conversations.
What does feminism mean to you, and why do you or don't you identify as a feminist? So Ariel, we can start with you.
I wouldn't identify as a modern feminist because I don't really feel any affinity for third wave feminism any way, shape, or form, but I support social and legal equality for men and women. And so I think that I think the term feminism has been co-opted by the left in some pernicious ways. So I'd like to identify as a feminist, but I'm not sure in the current vernacular that's really possible.
Got it. Blair, what do you identify as?
I definitely identify as a feminist, though I do agree that there has been, kind of a fraught history of feminism, particularly when you look at women's liberation. You often see people cite like 1920 as the year when women got the right to vote, but Native American women didn't have citizenship until 1924, much less the ability to vote until the Voting Rights Act was passed in, 65. So it's definitely a fraught term, but I think presently there's a lot of great feminist discourse where I do feel comfortable with the term, but it's not like my one axis.
Got it. Kate?
Yeah, I identify as a feminist, but I'm from a region in Texas where people are like, I'm a feminist and all my guns are pink. And I don't quite think that's feminism, but I agree that it's a constantly evolving word that should hopefully become more inclusive.
Lauren?
So I don't know, I think that the term feminism has been corrupted by people on the far left. I think that we can all agree that everyone wants equality of the sexes.
So you don't identify as feminist?
It depends what you define a feminist. If we're talking about previously mentioned equal rights, then of course I don't think there's a single person who would not want equal rights between the sexes. But if we're talking about feminism today, where it's become so radicalized, then I don't want to be associated with that movement.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a feminist. I'm a libertarian feminist, which a lot of people think that there's a disjunct between libertarianism and feminism, but I actually think that they have the same goals. It's basically about getting the state out of people's lives and allowing them to live whatever life path is best for them as an individual, regardless of their sex or gender.
Snaps for that.
Deja?
I identify as a feminist. It was the lens through which I first started to explore my identity. And more than that, my identity is as a young person, a woman of color, someone who experienced homelessness and poverty. And I think feminism is what you make it. And for me, it's very individualized. It's something that I've explored and is always growing for me.
Thank you. Simon?
I don't consider myself a feminist. Just the modern day feminist movement, I don't agree with it a lot.
Thank you. Destiny?
So I am a pro-life feminist, which I guess is something that has to be said these days since it's become so synonymous with abortion rights. But I'm a feminist because I believe in equality for women and that through our rights and liberations, we have a job to stand up for the weaker and more vulnerable and more marginalized, everybody in the human family who would fall under that category, which also includes unborn women and men.
Thank you. Nala?
Yes, I actually struggle with identifying as a feminist for a lot of different reasons. And when I think about my intersecting identities as it pertains to being Black, as it pertains to being also trans, as it pertains to this movement, I struggle with saying, oh, I'm a feminist, but also support women's rights at the same time. So it's something that I sit with. Where do I fall in as it pertains to moving? I know the issues that I want to talk about, so I lean more towards the issues versus saying that I quickly identify historically knowing how feminists as a movement is moving currently.
Got it. Is the term feminist inclusive of all women?
Okay, that was hard for me to sit through. Although I gave my opinion at the beginning, so I felt as though I should be respectful of the other individuals' time to speak here. Because if we're going to do this debate style and I'm just joining in, you as well here in the crowd, then I think that it's only respectful to listen to what everybody else has to say. But clearly, from what they have to say, it seems to be pretty divided, and a lot of people have the same opinion that I do, where feminism seems to on the forefront have a good moral, but the way it's being implemented in today's society is not necessarily the way that I or many others would like to see it being implemented, and therefore it's hard to call yourself a feminist even though you hold the ideals of what the description of feminism is. That's just my opinion. So let's keep going. I'm going to listen to this question again, and I will let this group of people say their words a little bit before I jump in. I didn't mean to mansplain over top of all of them, but I mean I felt like I was pretty on point there. So let's go, guys. What do you have to say? By the way, yeah, I get it. I saw that chat. A real feminist would never hesitate to shave a woman's testicles. It's a whole other story.
Identify historically knowing how feminists as a movement is moving currently.
Got it. Is the term feminist inclusive of all women?
No.
Why not?
I think that as a Jewish woman, it's very exclusive towards Jewish women. You know, when I was at the Women's March, you know, the leaders of the Women's March are known to be very anti-Semitic, and I just don't feel as a Jewish woman.
Is the mic still on? Well, the mic was still on anyways. I'm going to pause this for a second. It seems as though we may be experiencing some troubles. If we are, let me know in the comments below. And if so, I may have an issue here. Are we back? Are we live? Looks like we're live. Alright, let's keep going and get back into it. I'll have to chop it up. I hate editing these videos afterwards, but that's the way life goes, isn't it?
When I was at the Women's March.
Why not?
I
Identify historically knowing how feminists as a movement is moving currently.
Got it. Is the term feminist inclusive of all women?
No.
Why not?
I think that as a Jewish woman, it's very exclusive towards Jewish women. You know, when I was at the Women's March, you know, the leaders of the Women's March are known to be very anti-Semitic, and I just don't feel as a Jewish woman or as a conservative woman that I belong in the feminist movement.
Ariel, and then
I was just going to second what Lauren said in terms of being exclusionary for Jewish women in particular. I think it was really egregious the way in which it took so long for people, especially on the left, to actually condemn or distance themselves from the Women's March. And I think there are other people on this panel who could probably speak as well to the fact that if you are pro-life, as I myself am, there is also no space for you in modern feminism. You know, the tent of modern feminism does not include Jewish women, it does not include conservative women, and it certainly does not include pro-life women.
I actually disagree. I think that I understand certainly why a lot of people feel isolated from the modern feminist movement, because I think that there are a lot of outspoken people who have sort of tried to narrow down what it means to be feminist. I actually think that anybody of any gender can be a feminist as long as they believe that people should be equal and should be treated equally regardless of what their sex or gender is.
As somebody who gets told on a daily basis that I'm not a feminist because of my pro-life views, I think it's really easy to say, well, like, okay, you won't let me sit at your table, but fuck it, I'm gonna sit where I want. And I think that that's kind of the beauty of feminism, right? It is this radical movement that says you are supposed to be rebellious, and if people aren't gonna create space for you, then you take space for yourself.
So if you're not a feminist, are you against women?
No.
Okay, cool.
I mean, unless you're against women.
Yeah, exactly. I think you can be against women and not.
I think that statement was pretty representative of like they spoke for itself. Like the Women's March was pretty self-explanatory. When it took them so long to disavow people speaking negatively about Jewish people, like, what's wrong with you? Does that even make sense to anybody with a conscious mind that's watching this right now? I'm gonna look you right in the eye there, boys and girls. Are you fucking dumb? Anybody who would take the time to think about whether or not they should disavow racist or prejudiced comments, well, you got to take a second look at yourself. And yeah, obviously take the time to look into what the context was and what was actually being said. but it's for yourself to decide. And I guess that's what those raging, screaming Trump people that hate Trump so much think as well. So it's really all about getting deep and into your own train of thought. How do you feel about things? And do the research, boys and girls. Seriously. Look into what you believe. If you feel a certain way, you should be able to explain to me why you feel that way. Or I should be able to explain to you why I feel a certain way. And that's just the way I've operated for a while now. And yeah, let's keep going.
Not a feminist.
Yeah. It's like squares and
But I don't think that just identifying as not a feminist means that you're against women, because I think that a lot of people just identify against what they see as what feminism is, and not necessarily the actual idea of feminism as this larger conceptual idea.
And I think, too, you can be a feminist and still be against women. Just because you subscribe to a label doesn't mean that you're, like,
That's true.
peachy.
My next question, similar to a question I asked before, but now I'm changing it up. Are feminists anti-men?
Some are.
Yeah, sure. I think there are some. I do think that there are some people who view feminism as anti-men, and I think there is a smaller number of people who consider themselves feminists and are anti-men.
And I think, too, there's a conflation of patriarchy and men.
Yes.
And so people, like, you know, feminism is anti-patriarchy, right? And like, because there's so many systems that are against women, it's a fear that, like, we're gonna reduplicate it, you know, like this idea of black power being anti-white. It's like, no, it's just pro-black, you know, like, chill out. But just this fear that it's going to challenge the status quo in a negative way. But there are some very outspoken feminists who are anti-men and for, like, various reasons, and they exist. But to characterize the whole...
So what's the difference between being pro-white? It's just pro-white. It's not anti-black. It's just pro-white. What's the big problem? These people have no self-awareness, and it's utterly shocking to actually hear them speak. That's why we're here.
Group is that, or that as being negative, you know, is a whole other thing.
I also think that men are like really valuable allies in this movement because they hold a lot of power and privilege, and like they should be leveraging it to help put us at the front, to help us amplify our voices and our stories. Yeah, and that's what solidarity looks like. Seeing their success, their well-being is tied to my own is really important, and I want to work them in, and I want to leverage their privilege to help amplify all of our voices, right?
And I like that you brought up the idea of patriarchy, because I think that people view patriarchy as men, like all men are in positions of power, et cetera. And that's not true. It's about this certain view of how society should function that in many ways hurts men as well,
it's like
right?
this idea that you have to be like ultra fit, ultra masculine, you have to provide, that you can't have any mental health issues, that you have to be straight, that you have to be just kind of in this box. It's very harmful for people because like that is not how the mass majority of people have functioned in human history.
I just also want to push back on the...
I think that it's good for every woman to think of and realize the fact that men are not the driving factors that propel you to success. You are. There have been many great women in history and in the world today. Amazing queens that have ruled nations. Some of the greatest rulers. Like, what is I don't understand what the problem is with just feeling as though you should be empowered. You are. Everybody is. I don't have the same mindset, and so yeah. Some feminists, like this, they said it right off the bat. Like, some feminists hate men. Others are just regular individuals who want to see the best for everybody.
idea that, you know, we live in a society that's necessarily dominated by men, because if you actually look at educational achievement and attainment in this country, women are the ones that are getting the vast majority of bachelor's degrees. Advanced higher education is now dominated by women. So when we say, you know, we live in a society where men are dominating it, I'd actually say there's a lot of evidence out there that is suggesting that women are actually outpacing men, and especially in terms of earnings and all sorts of other things. So I think we can have a longer conversation about that as well. I'd be happy to. But I do think that there is, you know, this attitude that, you know, women are being oppressed by men. I think there's a lot to suggest out there, especially Christine Hoff Sommers has done quite a bit of data on this, that suggests that men are falling behind, especially when it comes to educational attainment. So I think that we have to be careful about the words we use when we say that it's a male-dominated society, because I think women are dominating in a lot of different ways, and I'm happy to see women succeed.
Question. I just want to know, we're talking about the past and all of this stuff. I just want to know how we're going to fix it, how we're going to get past it and move forward, instead of just being stuck on the past.
Well, I
By
think
talking about it.
Yeah, well, I think that part of what empowers people to change the present is knowing what was structurally against them in the past, right? So
I'm just tired of talking. If we want to, make progress and do better and get women working, and stop, single moms from being poor and stuff, what are the programs? How we going to reach out? How we going to fix it? Because talking is really not doing nothing.
You say you don't identify as a feminist, and you just want to see the action. You want to leave the past.
Yeah, I'm
in the
about
past.
action. I'm not about just keep talking and just talking and talking. I want programs. Let's
I don't know if anybody can even see the stream right now. It continuously keeps lagging so hard for myself when I try to view it, and so I just wonder if you can see it. If you can, we'll keep going. If so, drop a line in the chat. If not, then I'm going to hold off and potentially do this a little bit later this evening when I defrag the computer and make a little bit more storage. It's good. He says it's good. Okay, let's just keep going then. I don't care. I can't see it. I don't need to see it. Here we go, boys and girls.
Let's go to the White House. Let's go to the government. Let's go out here. Let's go vote. Let's make sure that our representatives are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Let's get back to the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Come together, make our own programs. You get what I'm saying? I'm all about that stuff. I'm not about just sitting down talking. I'm about action.
In America today, do you feel that women still need to fight for equality?
Yes.
Yes.
Why?
Just look at the GOP. I mean, where's the representation? I think that's the thing, coming from Texas, being surrounded by a lot of conservatives, and knowing representation is important, knowing that people don't know what they don't know, and if there's not a female voice there, or a woman of color, or a trans person to bring these issues up to the table, it's not going to get dealt with. There's not going to be any type of solutions or policies or programs that go into play. And I'm at the point now where I don't think the government's the end all be all. I think it's time we have to save ourselves. And so I think that that's kind of what we have to come back to, is grassroots activism and being...
I can't even those snaps. It's like, what, do you want to offend me? You're gonna offend me by clapping too loud? We live in the world. Guess what? The world's tough. If you can't even clap, you got a big problem, redheaded lady. Look at I don't mean to be rude or anything. The stereotypical raging feminist, right, with the crazy hair colors and the smug look on her face, the bright lipstick. And these two exemplify this. She says she's a bad feminist. I think that they probably have some pretty interesting knowledge behind them, but it's just funny to see that. And I thought I'd point it out. But that just really made me upset when I saw her snapping. I even lost my train of thought. I had an actual point to say, but those snaps, they really got under my skin. I guess triggered. That's what I am.
The help that our communities need, because we see the need. They're very visible to us. They're not visible in politics at this point, at least not on the right.
Even though there was like this there was this awakening on the Democrat side in terms of having more women, I wouldn't say that a lot of the women that came into the Democratic Party or were representing the Democrats were not women that I felt like I could really connect with. For me, at least, if it's a man or a woman, if it's the ideology that I can align with, I don't necessarily need a woman to feel represented.
So are there not quality Republican women then?
There definitely are, but my point is that there is definitely like a messaging and imaging problem within the GOP. I'm not disputing that, but I vote based on whatever ideas I think are being put forth that I think are the best, whether it's a man or a woman putting them forth.
So I'm going to move on. We're already on the topic of the government and just everything that's going on. So I'm going to move on with a couple questions here. But by a show of hands, who here voted for Trump?
I don't publicize my votes, actually.
So does anyone have questions for the women here that voted for Trump?
Why?
Okay, the reason why I voted for Trump is because I actually was a fellow for the Democratic Party, and so I just really did not like Hillary Clinton. You know, I actually also did a lot of community work for Bernie Sanders as well, and I don't know, I literally sat in the voting booth for like, it was a long time, and I don't know, I just like checked the box. Honestly, I honestly didn't even think he was gonna win, so part of it was a kind of a joke, but again, I don't know, but will I vote for
want to speak to the privilege that holds for that election to be a joke for you, right?
Well, like, it wasn't really a joke. I was like, you know.
Just said it.
Well, let me recant what I meant.
You just said it. Let me tell you right now. The fact that these women can't even fathom the fact that any woman would vote for Trump. It's like, yeah, he's not the greatest person, but like, there's a little bit more nuance there. These women think that if there was any woman to vote for this person or to just even support like the president of the United States at this stage, 3 years in, that they must be some sort of internal sexist. And it's absolutely wild to see that perspective. You need to have an open mind and realize that people make decisions based on factors that you may have no understanding of, and your reality, the way that you see the world around you, isn't the way that everybody else sees it. It's just strange to me.
By a joke, you know, I didn't like either party. You know, I think it was like, if Bernie Sanders was on the ticket, I would have voted for Bernie Sanders, because I really did at the time really love what he stood for, because, you know, he really did a lot of grassroots, and I related to him as a Jewish American, and I thought that socialism was the answer. And then, you know, but then what happened with Hillary Clinton when she stole the election from him, you know, I just couldn't vote for her just because she was a woman. So I did vote for Trump.
Why
but
not
again,
write in?
Because that's wasting a vote.
But it was a joke.
But it was a joke vote, so.
Okay, well, me, I support Trump simply because he a businessman, and I come from a business family. I was raised, my dad was a single dad. He owned his own business. So, you know, who wouldn't want to vote for Trump? He's a businessman. He's a whole billionaire.
It was handed to him
He's
by his
an
father.
entire billionaire. Just because his dad gave him $1 million afterwards, what does that mean? You have to keep up with that. How you build from that 1 million?
I personally feel like
I mean, and he went, and he got that 1 million. He went all the way like into debt, almost into like what, $1 billion debt. Came up out of that, and have been successful ever since. And I mean, and me, I'm not a person that just sit there and watches one news channel. I go out and I go to the Women's March. I go and I talk to everybody. I see both sides. I'm not a one-sided person. I would never be that. Because once you're a one-sided person, then they can easily eat you alive, period.
Do you consider yourself a Republican?
No, I'm a conservative.
But you like Trump, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that girl. She makes a lot of sense, right? Go out, get your information, look at all sides, make your decisions. Because once you start picking sides, that's when you're going to start running into problems. Once you start closing your mind to opening up to new information, that is where you will find yourself pizza in when you should be French frying. Right? So, come on. Think about it. Use your brain. Get a head on your shoulders. That's all I ask. That's all I want. That's all I want in life. That's all I'm trying to promote here.
Wow.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton or for Donald Trump. Honestly, it's something that I thought on a lot because, you know, it was really important to me. I know that one vote doesn't matter that much, but the ideas behind the vote, I think, do matter. And for me, I tried it, I weighed them on everything, and I just kept coming up where they were just equally bad. These were the two least popular presidential candidates of American history, period, both of them, right?
And I'm gonna like recant my statement. You know, It was like a really hard election because, it was like my first time voting. And again, I thought that Donald Trump was a really he didn't represent me. And do I regret my decision? I'm not going to divulge in that. But again, I think that voting is important. And when I said it was a joke, I think that was kind of an inappropriate thing to say.
Also,
never apologize for what you've said or what you've done unless you wholeheartedly believe that that was not the correct thing or situation or anything to do. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. If you've said something, then own it. Own it. Don't walk yourself back. Don't apologize. Don't pander to people that don't care anyways. They're not going to accept your apology. They don't care. They've already made up their mind as to who you are and who this girl is. Anything she says from this point forward is not going to take back the statement she's already made. Never apologize. It does nobody any good. Unless you wholeheartedly feel as though you've done something wrong.
I was never going to vote for Hillary, period. First of all, she upset me because she over there, she comes on a black radio station talking about I got hot sauce in my bag, like, girl, boo. Then at the end, she didn't never talk about what she was going to do for the black community, but she had the nerve to get Beyonce and Jay-Z up there and throw us a concert 2 days before election. Like, girl, how is that going to help us? We love Beyonce and Jay-Z, but how is that going to help the black community? She called us super predators. Her husband sat up there. He signed a whole crime bill which locked up the most black men in history. I'm not about to, no. She got it. I wasn't going to vote for her, period. She's so corrupt. Like the Clintons, they corrupt. I would never support them.
And let me just say, as a feminist, I felt like Hillary Clinton's campaign very much was trying to profit off of this whole idea that she was going to be the first woman president. And if we look for who voted for her, it was largely women in their 60s. And I think it's because for those women, they saw this as the one opportunity for women to ever get to that higher office. Millennial women like me, we didn't vote for Hillary Clinton because I think that we see that the world is getting to a place where there's going to be a chance for a woman who might actually be good for the office, right?
She felt like she just owned the election. Like when her and Obama was going at it, they looked.
That was a really good point that she actually brought up there. It's like, that was one main reason that, yeah, look at that, look at that mouse over top of the girl's eye. Anyways, that was one main reason why I couldn't get behind Hillary Clinton. Sure, I have no problem with a woman being president, but it should be a good woman, someone that you can get behind and stand behind the policies that they actually put forth, and somebody who you can respect. She was not the one. Plain and simple.
Literally destroyed each other, and then they came out and they was like, oh, buddy. Oh, you think since, you friends with Obama, I'm gonna vote for you because Obama black, and we was down with Obama. Girl, boo, get up out of here. You got me messed up. Hillary Clinton tried to play me and she wasn't, period.
So let me ask you a question. So like Loren and
Trump didn't never play me, period. Everything Trump said that he was gonna do, he did it, period.
So a question for Loren and Diamond, what has been your experience with progressive women? Knowing that you voted for Trump.
You mean like once I came out as a Trump supporter, I got a lot of hate. I lost a lot of friends, a lot of family members. I get called Uncle Tom, Coon. It don't even matter. Like,
do you feel like you get it on both sides, both being black and a woman?
Yeah, being black. They always be like, as a black woman. I'm a businesswoman. I want to own my own business. I want to be a billionaire.
The only time I've ever been attacked was by liberal women. So it's really ironic when you say, oh, conservatives or this and that, when I find that liberals are some of the most intolerant people. One of my friends got punched in the face at UC Berkeley just because he was tabling with a conservative organization. You see this happening all the time.
And vice versa.
I've never
die for being people of color all the time.
People of color die, like literally
not
die.
Face, but like
death. And I think when we're having this conversation about conservative, I think it's also like, as was uplifted, that how this country uplifts white supremacy. And there is a conversation about anti-blackness that we also must and get to have a conversation about that exists in this space.
I thought that we were talking about politics on being conservative or liberal, not colored.
But they're all intertwined. You can't divide them because we exist with all of those identities, not just as a woman, but a first-generation American woman or immigrant woman of color. All of those are our identities.
So my next question is, how is abortion, pro-life, and pro-choice wrapped up into feminism? So that's one pack there.
I think for a lot of people, feminism, this wave of feminism has become synonymous with abortion. And so it's something where if you don't subscribe to abortion, then you don't belong in the feminist movement. And I think that that's where we're trying to create a space, because we follow something called the consistent life ethic, which means we oppose all forms of violence for the duration of someone's life. So we're anti-war, we're anti-death penalty, anti-torture. We extend it into the womb when human beings are at their weakest and most vulnerable by also being anti-abortion. So for me, this is actually a very progressive belief. More human rights for more human beings.
Dun dun dun. That's why she's a bad feminist. Now look at the faces. Look at these. The one, the far right bottom, looking back. A little scowl. Girl beside her. Wow. Girl in the pink. Can't even believe it. Staring straight forward, trying to contain her anger. The girl right beside her to her left. Look at that anger in her face. But who knows? Maybe that's just me making judgments. Probably.
And when I talk to people about this, you know, the common response I get is like, all right, I disagree with that, but I see where you're coming from. And so from there, I try to take it to a common ground perspective of, you know, if you're pro-choice, cool. Like legally you can have an abortion in this country, but let's talk about what these other choices are as well. And how can we support women who are facing unplanned pregnancies like I had when I was 16 years old? You know, what was the support and honestly the privilege I had to be able to choose life for my son, because so many women don't have that. And so by saying, oh, you know, abortion's pro-choice, for a lot of women it's not. It's the only choice. It's a necessary evil. And so I think that feminists have to come together and create space to have dialogue like this.
And I think personally, I very much agree. And I'm always kind of like, when folks say that they're pro-life, but then they don't give a shit about black people getting murdered in the streets, they don't care about black trans women having the life expectancy of 35 years old. I'm kind of like, where's this energy to be quote unquote pro-life, but the only life you care about is before, you know, exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel like it has to be a more holistic approach. And I think that when you see feminism that has this one axis that only talks about abortion, like having gone to school in Louisiana, I knew kids who knew what abortion was before they knew what a pap smear was. And you should be able to talk about all of sexual health, not just, you know, the most sensational elements of sexual health.
I mean, I have a lot of opinions about this because I am from Texas and I went to Catholic school. They would pass around the little fetuses, and yet I've always believed, like, you know,
They would pass around fetuses?
the baby at different months. These little plastic. You know, it was traumatizing. It was like at the different things. But 9 months in America, you're not, unless there's something wrong with you, you can't have an abortion at 9 months. This is not Asia. This is not one of those.
Have you not been paying attention to New York? What just happened?
Yes, you can. So this
And
is the
in
egregious.
Virginia.
There's also the Democrats voted against this born alive survivor. Basically, there was a bill that was proposed that would have criminalized not providing health care to a child that survives an abortion. And this is something that I felt like this is the logical conclusion of abortion is infanticide. When you decide to dehumanize a child and decide that its worth is based on its convenience in your life, and you have decided that once that child is born and it survives a botched abortion, it's living and breathing, and it's not a criminal activity to deny it health care, take it to a hospital, that is hugely problem. I think that is reprehensible and it is infanticide.
So from a medical context, when an abortion happens and they're, you know, like the fetus is otherwise viable, then you don't generally see just fetal tissue being discarded. It generally is like if the mother's life is in danger, if it's an ectopic pregnancy, but this is getting into like a lot of medical jargon, and I think that this particular bill was used to like paint Democrats as baby killers, and that's a narrative we see a lot.
Margaret Sanger, she literally came up with Planned Parenthood to kill black people.
She's a eugenicist.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what also confuses me about the women's movement, the feminist movement, is that we always be like, oh, the female is the future, but we killing them. What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? I mean, I was raised up in a rough area. You was raised up with a single mom. What if your mom would have aborted you? You wouldn't be here to talk.
Right.
You couldn't
I wouldn't be here to
president.
talk though either if I hadn't made it to higher education, if I hadn't made it to Columbia, and I'm pro-choice in every sense. I'm pro-choice in the sense that you should be able to choose your life path, that you should be able to go to college, that you should be able to have that dream job no matter where you're from. And if abortion is a part of that story, you know, if birth control is a part of that story, if sex education is a part of that story.
I don't have a problem
Right?
with birth
That's what I
control.
want to work in as we make this conversation go
I don't
a little
have an
bit
issue
further.
with birth
I think we
control
should be
at all.
talking about birth
But abortion
control
isn't
and
birth
sex
control.
education
Yeah.
as well.
Abortion isn't birth control, and most people don't use abortion as birth control. But I think,
And most people wouldn't have
look,
abortions
so
if they
I
had
think
access
that
to birth control.
we need to have OTC, not insurance, not going through, but we need OTC access to birth control and. No, over the counter, $5 for everybody. Not just for birth control, but for Plan B, which it's worth mentioning. People confuse it with the abortion drug. There is a pill that you can take that will induce an abortion. Plan B does not do that. What it does is it prevents. But Plan B prevents a pregnancy from happening. Essentially, what it does is it prevents an egg from prevents a fertilized egg from implanting. So you never become pregnant in the first place. And if you're already pregnant, it does not harm the baby. And this is huge. This is a big one. We have to culturally change what it means to be a young, poor, or single mother. As long as you're shaming women for being single moms, for being young moms, as long as we're treating people poorly, as long as we're holding them back, if they're not able to go to school, they're not able to get a job, they're not able to do all of these things, you're giving them an incentive for abortion when they're getting they get kicked out of church, they get kicked out of their homes. Like, that is the cause of most of what this is. I mean, a lot.
It's really interesting just to listen to the women speak about this topic. It's a really nuanced situation that I do have a lot of opinions on, but I think that it requires a much more thoughtful investigation before I just go speaking on this topic in particular, because I'd like to get my train of thought right down perfectly and have my words come out exactly how I mean them to come out and have no misinterpretations. But with this part of the debate, it is very interesting just to listen to what they feel as though their main concerns are and what would help them, and the differences between each woman, how they feel. It's interesting. Let me know how you think. How you think, what you think, how you feel, what you feel. All of the above, boys and girls.
A lot of the rest of it is just like someone who really wanted their baby finds out that they're being born without a brain or without a heart.
The feminist movement, unfortunately, is kind of pushing this narrative that you can't have your child and go to school. You can't have your child and, you know, achieve this successful life. Like,
I think
my
that
feminism's
some
rooted in you
feminists
can,
do.
and we're the sisterhood that's going to come around and support you.
As the daughter of a woman who went to college in the 70s, and like I'm from rural Texas. This man, when I was home recently, was he was like, I want you to vote for me. I'll protect your rights to go hunting and fishing without a license anytime and no background checks. And my mom is 65, and she said, what about my right to abortion? And he said, you know, I back the Bible. And she started chanting, my body, my choice, my body, my choice. But even then, it was like they were both yelling at each other. There was no conversation. And at least now I like that there's conversation. But I do think it's my body, my choice, and that the government should not be regulating it, because we're going to go around it anyway. Coat hangers, like horrific thing.
Well, and that's the issue. It's supply and demand, right? So they're trying to cut off supply, but they're not addressing the demand side and why this is an issue. I think preventative care, I think sex education, like all of these things, every prevented potential pregnancy is a prevented potential abortion. So I am all for us actually addressing the demand side and freaking keep the Bible out of it. It's just basic science and biology at this point. Like, that's how we have the conversation.
So my next question,
Don't make
by
it
show of
really-
hands, do you support the Me Too movement?
I used to.
Okay, and why did you
Because
use to
I feel
and no
like the
longer?
Me Too movement have been hijacked, honestly.
Say that once more.
It's been hijacked, honestly.
By whom?
By liberals. They took it to extreme. I went to a protest. It was believe all women. No, because my dad's a single dad. He have dated many women. What if a woman lied on my dad? Then I wouldn't have my dad to raise me, and I'd be in foster care or something. I understand. I'm a victim of molestation and stuff, so I understand that. I understand what you're going through. But to sit there and say, oh, believe all women, and just to demonize a man, I don't agree with that.
So let me add on to that. I think that the Me Too movement did a lot of good. But with that being said, I think the whole idea of believe all women unequivocally is also a problem because, there are instances where women do lie and, even an accusation can cause horrific damage towards an individual. It's damaging. So we need to be very careful how we go about this.
So I want to speak to that a little bit because I very much do believe in due process, but I don't think that believe women, or when they say believe survivors, I don't think they mean believe them in the face of all evidence that points to the opposite. I think it's more like if someone comes and tells you, hey, my car got stolen, you don't tell them, prove to me that your car got stolen. There's no way I won't believe it until you can prove it. I think it's more you believe that their car was stolen and then you investigate it as if it were stolen. And then if it suddenly appears that it wasn't stolen and they've had it at home in their garage the whole time, then you're like, hey, I don't believe you on this. Now you have to justify it, right?
I think that's a really accessible way to put it, right? We're trying to change the culture. It's about changing culture and like changing the assumptions that are ingrained in us.
So my next question, has work culture changed for the better because of Me Too?
I think yes and no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think yes and no because I think that it has made a lot more people empathetic to other people's issues, and I think that's a big part of it. I think unfortunately also it's created this sort of reactionaryism. We saw these stories of people who were saying like, oh, well, now I just won't invite women out to go to lunch with me, or I don't hire women because I think that this might be a risk, or stuff like that.
Now it's like, well, now I can't even be in a room alone with the woman. And it's like, well, oftentimes being a woman in the workforce, you are already anticipating, I know I'm not going to be in a room by myself. Or if I am, going to make sure that it's like glass and that there's people present. And so I think that now you're seeing this cautiousness, perhaps for folks who have had the privilege of not having to think about, constantly, who are now considering this.
I think there are people who are predators and there are people who misunderstood consent at some point in some way.
Because society incentivizes.
Right, exactly, because society does make it very easy to do that. And so I think we need to understand the difference between the two.
For me, I can't think of the Me Too movement and not have to face the fact that these people are suffering major repercussions in their career, like Louis C.K., Harvey Weinstein, and I'm so glad, that's wonderful. But that I have to look at Trump and he said the grab the pussy thing. Like, I cannot get over that. I cannot get over
Trump said that in privacy.
That is the music.
No. This is free speech. You can say whatever you want to say.
That's fine.
Finally, a topic that I can talk on. Jeez Louise. Like, I've just been listening in, and it's been good. I like hearing what they have to say, and I think that I understand why it's all women on the panel now because of the questions that they're asking. But with this... I'm going to just give my opinion before they speak, and then we'll listen to them speak here. But with this topic that continuously gets brought up, grab her by the pussy. They take that. Grab her by the motherfucking pussy. And if you put that into quotes, that's like taking something from the middle of the sentence. It's like if I was to say, hey, I just went to the store, and you took just went to the store. Like, what? I said, hey, I just went to the store. Just went to the store. Like, what? He said, I can't verbatim quote this shit, but, like, look it up. He was speaking in context, saying that when you are famous, women will let you grab them by the pussy. That is not something that is respectable to say. But it seems like a pretty uncontroversial statement. What is the stereotypical MO of a groupie? What is a groupie? Look it up. Like, figure it out. I don't understand. I really just do not understand. Please, if you have any context, give it to me, because I'm not getting it. It's not coming through this brain here. Figure it out, please. Or figure it out for me. If I'm an idiot, if I'm not intelligent enough to get it, then please just clearly outline it for me in the comments below, because that's all I need. Little context here.
You can say whatever you want to say. That was private, and he recorded him. He violated Trump. Trump can say whatever he want to say. Women talk nasty about men in their own privacy, and so can Trump.
I don't say that about men.
So
I
can
don't
Trump.
say that I
and
like
Trump
to assault
said,
men.
Trump said groupies will literally let you. Have y'all never been around groupies? Because they do.
My grandmother used to
He
say
just
that
told the
integrity
truth.
is what happens in private, and if that I don't want a politician in the White, unfortunately that's the case, that does messed up fuck shit in private because
Okay, but
it's in
Obama,
private.
Obama smoked weed.
That's okay with me. That's not the same
Okay,
as
if Obama, no, you gotta hold everybody on the same line. If Obama can do that,
So that's
so can Trump. Trump can say whatever he want to say. Trump can say whatever he want to say.
So, I mean, I think the difference,
I'm just saying because weed is illegal in some places.
Yeah,
I'm just
absolutely,
saying.
because it's a
So if
criminalized
he can do
behavior
that, if
with
he
no
can do that and
victim.
say that and do that, then so can he.
It's a criminalized behavior with
It's
no
not.
victim.
I think the language is reprehensible. I think
No,
the
no,
language
no.
is reprehensible. I agree. So I can agree with that. I also think that when we talk about when we talk about behavior of people, I think what happened with President Clinton and his intern is also a violation.
Right.
That was a power position.
Right.
That was a position that he abused. So I think there are a lot of men out there that make bad choices. And so I think the Me Too movement, what it's at least done is started a conversation or continued or amplified, amplified's a better word, amplified a conversation that we as women were already having, maybe, right? Yes?
And that pisses me off about Democrats is that they let Clinton slide, but then
and he was going to go back in the White House, okay? So he was going to be the first man, right? He was going to be the first man. So if we want to be real about this conversation, he was going to be the first man we've ever had in this country.
Right, but that would also be holding his wife accountable for
but
his
this
actions.
is exactly, but
which is
women,
very.
that's why I, as a feminist, couldn't vote for her because she was trying to suppress women's
silence.
rights.
She tried to silence his accusers.
For Bill Clinton.
So this is
I mean, I agree with holding men to account for their
right, but
So
I agree with
let me just have her finish, and then we can move on to Deja, and then have another.
but you were going on. You were saying.
This is about holding men accountable for their actions. We are not speaking about the negative actions of women here tonight, okay? Just disregard anything that she did. This is about Bill Clinton, not Hillary. She's a saint.
Saying it better than I was. But she did try to silence his accusers in a lot of different ways. And if we're going to talk about exactly.
Right,
If we're going to talk about the
it
importance of the
continues.
Me Too movement, we have to reckon with things that happened in the past that are probably uncomfortable. And I think that's been a big part of the Me Too movement. I do think there are excesses to the Me Too movement that you talked about very poignantly, which is sort of the backlash or the attitude that people have towards it. Do I think there's a possibility of people misunderstanding? I think that's that's been a big, significant chunk of it. I don't know the percentage, but I do think that there are a lot of men now that are wait, how do I behave now? What's the appropriate way to behave? And the hard part with that too is a lot of people meet their spouses at work. And so a lot of the behavior, a lot of the behavior that we engage in when we are dating with someone, it's hard because those boundaries get blurred at work so many times when people are just starting a relationship. So if we want to talk about the Me Too movement, I think we have to be really nuanced, but I also think we should talk about, what are the dynamics of dating and how do we navigate? I mean, this is kind of scary for men and women. How do we navigate how to date in the workplace?
Well, do you think
that's a reality?
dating, that's actually a question that I wanted to bring up. Do you feel that Me Too has affected dating?
So I am friends with a lot of men, and they think that they're scared of dating. I don't. And when I talk to them, I'm like, can you please elaborate? And they're like, well, what happens if I had too much to drink and the girl had too much to drink and she wakes up the next morning? And because I've had discussions with a lot of females as well, and I had a conversation with one of my TAs in one of my classes, and what she said was absolutely terrifying. She said, if I had alcohol and the guy had alcohol and I wake up the next morning and I don't remember it, then that's rape. But it's like, but what happens if both of you guys are intoxicated during a night? Should you not have sex when you're drinking at all? Who should limit that? So I think that's a very serious discussion we should have with our partners. But a lot of
I know facial expressions don't say everything, but look at the look on her face when she's speaking about this. Oh my God, can you even imagine somebody would have this opinion? This girl, okay, girl, listen. You're attractive, but your attitude brings you down 100%. You out. You're gone. But we'll see, because maybe I'm just ignorant and don't know what she's actually thinking, and am projecting my own negative attributes of individuals that I disagree with onto this woman. Because that could always be the case, and I'm willing to accept that. But that's not how I feel. You just heard what the girl was saying beside her, and then you look beside the girl, and this is what the face looks like of the woman sitting next to her, and you think to yourself, oh my God. At least I do.
That's a very serious discussion we should have with our partners. But a lot of men are terrified of taking a girl home who's had any amount of alcohol because he doesn't want to get accused of sexual assault.
I think it's better to be worried about that than to do it and not worry about it.
Exactly. I agree.
Also,
I agree, yeah.
Join the club. Like, girls and women and femmes have been terrified to go on dates and go home and drink forever. So join the club. Like, let's all get on it together and fix it, because it's on all of us.
I think that, so as a person who isn't...
Education's key. Teaching women that when and how to appropriately discuss with men that they are not interested, and how to stay firm and be confident in themselves and let somebody know when they do not want something, I think is a very appropriate thing. But also, short form, the way to say it is just what have men been told their whole lives, right? It's if you have a tough situation, man up. If tell the guy, say what's up. If you do not want something, say it. I do not want this situation. From a man's point of view, I'll put it to you this way. If I ever saw a random woman on the street yell out that she was in distress and she was with a guy, and it seemed as though the guy was harming her, I would be obligated to help. It only makes sense. It only makes sense. There are so many things that I don't understand, and that's what I'm hoping that as this channel grows, I can find more open-minded people that are willing to have discussions and let me know what their points of views are, because I truly just do not understand where these people are coming from at all. At all. So if you do, just tell me. Let me know. That's all. I'm begging you. Let me know. Tell me in the comments below.
Engaging only with straight people, so my partner and I, we were together prior to the Me Too movement, but in our own daily activities, we started asking each other can I kiss you, and are more vocal during sex, and I think that's better. Oh, by the way, I'm Muslim and I have sex. That's going to be a big thing, but I can't wait for that backlash tweets. But anyway, I think that as far as looking at sexual relationships, looking at intimacy and looking at dating, just conversations about consent and being more affirmative about consent and having more conversations, whether that's hey, I take medication, or hey, this is I'm on birth control or I'm not, or when was the last time you were tested? I think all of that has to be a larger conversation, and I'm seeing that within the queer community happen a lot more as Me Too is happening, but also because we have to deal with more of this, and because health outcomes, for example. So I'm seeing a lot. I don't know about the straights though. It sounds pretty rough.
I'll talk about the straights and the whites and all of the things. But I'm from such a conservative rural area where I was always told being a flirt means you have a good personality. I'm supposed to let people hug me, or I'm being really rude. And for me, this idea of consent and young girls saying, actually, I don't want to hug, I'm so that is radical to me, because I was taught you're being rude to this person. And so consent is parallel to boundaries for me.
Right, for my next question, by a show of hands, are trans women helping push forward women's movement and gender equality?
Oh, I want to hear this.
Wait, what?
Okay. So why?
So we wouldn't have the LGBTQ rights movement if it wasn't for Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson.
Come on, you better know your
Okay,
history.
right? Okay. I'm a historian. Let's go. No, but for real, if we didn't have, we would still be in this idea of gay, cisgender white men saying we are just like you, except we are gay. And we would not have marriage equality today if it wasn't for Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson pushing the envelope and saying no. We're saying no to police brutality. We're saying no to respectability. We're saying no to this idea that we have to fit into your straight box and then just check the gay box or check the trans box and still be okay. And so you continue to see, even though that We wouldn't have the advancements in the women's liberation movement if we hadn't had this conversation about LGBTQ rights movement happening simultaneously.
I think as a trans woman on this panel, I often experience that women feel that trans women are not supporting us. It's like, well, trans women often get pushed to the corner, like we don't want you in our spaces, but yet we stand and fight. Even with, like, as trans women of color, we started and supported the Black Lives Matter movement, and then oftentimes we still see Black trans women being murdered, and there's no conversation around it.
For the people that disagreed.
I'm going to say the whole trans issue is another long and nuanced topic, so I'm going to stay out of it right now.
Would you like to make
I sort of disagree. I thought people didn't raise their hand.
No statement?
You know, I think it's interesting though, right? Because when you have to, you didn't raise your hand, which was passive, but when you have to actively deny someone like their humanity, their agency to their face, it's really something.
All right, there. If no one's going to stand up and talk about it, then I guess I'm going to be the one that actually has to stand up and talk about it. I have absolutely no problem with trans women, trans men, trans people in general. And I think that trans women have played a very big role in modern day feminism and the movement towards equality in where they are today. But I think that in today's society, we have a serious problem with not acknowledging the fact that trans individuals have a mental disorder that influences and impacts the way that they live their daily lives and needs to be addressed in order for them to live comfortably. And if we want to have a society that's filled with the best and happiest people, then we need to address those issues fully and find a way to actually fix the problem that they're facing instead of putting a band-aid over top of it. And therefore, I feel as though we don't address those issues enough, and that is something that needs to be addressed whenever speaking about trans issues. But do trans women contribute, or have they contributed to modern day feminism and the goals that they've achieved? Yes, of course. Yes, of course. I don't understand this. I just don't understand it. I'm getting upset. Like you guys, if anybody that's been on the channel for any extended period of time, you can go back and see. I've had this channel for 2 years now, and I started it in the beginning because I felt as though I needed to speak my mind. Free speech was under attack, and I felt as though before I could no longer speak my opinion, I thought, hey, why not just go out there and say whatever I have on my mind? The political landscape has increasingly grown more hostile and more divided, and there are certain individuals that their mindset and their ideology is so far away from my own that it's very hard to see the connection, but I try very hard to understand where they're coming from. And that is one of the main goals of the channel, is to reach out to those individuals who may not feel the same as I do and inquire into the mindset that they have, ask them questions, see how they feel, and try to understand and learn from their perspective. Anyone that's willing to actually give it. The left is pretty hard to talk to.
Something different.
I'm not denying anything. I don't have that much knowledge on it, so I'm listening and I'm learning.
Exactly.
That's beautiful.
All right, perfect. So, do traditional gender roles have a place in society?
Yes.
Sure,
Yes.
I think as long as they're voluntary, I think as long as people actually want that and we're in a situation where they're actually able to make those choices for themselves on an individual level, I think it's fine. The problem is when people are forced into it.
And I've also seen a lot of shaming from like radical liberal, like feminists who shame stay-at-home moms. It's not my kind of lifestyle. I want to work, but why are we shaming women who don't want to work and who want to raise their kids? There's nothing shameful about that.
Ariel,
I
did you
agree,
have
but I
anything
think
to
people
add to
also
that?
shame men who want to stay home and raise their kids.
No, I agree.
too.
I agree.
I think that there is inherent value in traditional gender roles, and there are certain occupations that are more suited to, like I'm thinking about, there are certain time, like for construction, for instance, right? When we talk about this inequity in gender role, in gender distribution in certain industries like construction, I don't necessarily think the answer is we go into the construction industry and say, okay, we need 50% women and 50% men, because I do think that there are certain gender differences that sort of make women at least gravitate towards a certain field, and not because there's a cultural pressure, but because there's an innate desire to be there.
I disagree slightly because I feel like gender role as it exists currently is also tied to binary, right? So again, like,
You would disagree.
my experience is different, and I see trans folks who operate differently, and in school, like, so I feel like gender roles has this patriarchal kind of system of how if you're mask presenting, you automatically fall under operating masculine. And if you're femme presenting, you automatically have to fit into the role of how feminine and women operate, which I think is hindering on just, again, the intimacy and what can actually be possible to create. So slightly disagree.
My next question, are there ways in which women are privileged in our society as opposed to men?
Yes.
How so?
Like I mentioned before, the draft. Women, like the women don't have to sign up for the draft. You know, women are more likely to win custody battles just because they're a woman. Again, and women are more likely to believe during sexual assault. There's just a lot of instances where women have privileges over men.
And we get free drinks.
Yeah, but there are informal ways in which women are advantaged. I think we're forgiven for certain things a little bit easier. I think that when it comes to like getting a parking ticket or getting a speeding ticket or having something paid for at the bar, like you said.
Crimes.
Yeah, actual crimes. But there are things I think that women are sort of, again, there's like this forgiving attitude towards women, and I think that does, play into this. It does become a sort of privilege, an informal privilege.
I think when we're talking about those like cultural privileges, that they don't apply to all women. Like that is white women have a lot of those privileges, whereas brown and
Cry me a fucking river. I hate that girl so much. I just disagree. I don't hate her. I don't really hate many people in my life, but I disagree with this girl so much. Like, I'm going to listen to her point. That's why I went back as well. I also want to just put it onto her, but I'll go back so we can listen to what she has to say. But, okay, you have to have a racist mindset to think that only applies to white women. You think that, do you think that only white women get special treatment? You think that if a black woman drops, if I'm walking down the street and it's like little things in the store, if I need help or something, I don't know, it's like little things. You're more obligated to help a woman. You're gonna hold the door for a woman. You're gonna do little things. If a black woman is not gonna knock it out of a speeding ticket any more than a white woman. They both are women. Men are men. And then you're gonna say that women of color don't get the same experiences as white women, although men will rape anything and they love everything, and like they have no discrepancy, and they're just the worst animals of life. Like there's no consistency in the thought process that these people have, or certain people, and I feel as though she is one of these people with that mindset. I would love to pick her brain more and actually have a real conversation, but for now, I'm outside of the actual debate, and they wouldn't have let me in anyways because I'm a man, and this is a debate of all women. So, but yeah, let's go back. Let's listen to what she actually has to say, so that I'm not an asshole here talking over her. And let me know if you think that she's correct, or if I'm correct, so that I can win this moral objective in my own head.
I think when we're talking about those like cultural privileges, that they don't apply to all women. Like that is white women have a lot of those privileges, whereas brown and black women are not getting those same privileges.
Become a sort of privilege, an informal privilege.
I think when we're talking about those like cultural privileges, that they don't apply to all women. Like that is white women have a lot of those privileges, whereas brown and black women are not getting those same privileges. We're not experiencing that. And I think white women have a lot of privilege over a lot of men of color too. Rich white women over like the poor men of color from my neighborhood the privilege difference is enormous.
Even not rich. I mean, I grew up without money,
Right.
but because I look like this, I got away with a lot. Like,
And the interesting thing too is like how assumptions about gender can influence too. So like because I wear a hijab, I'm read as Arab, but when I'm read as, when I have my like little fro out and I'm like read as black, then I don't have that same like grace that a woman is granted. So I'm read as demure and quiet, but when I'm read as black, I'm read as angry and violent and masculine. But when you look at me being read as a Muslim woman, I feel like I can get away with more like in a professional space because, oh, she's speaking up, she's being brave. And it's like, no, I'm just loud, but it's assumed that I'm not going to be. And then that is given like a token of, wow, good on you.
Which is come back to like when you ask these questions, I often say it's to whom you're asking them, because we have multiple identities and multiple experiences. So of course, you're going to say yes and you're going to bring up the draft, and of course I'm going to say no because that's not my experience of privilege, like it's not my existence.
I also think it's worth mentioning, like all of these things that you brought up, but I think that, or even the drinks thing, right? Like the free drinks, ladies' night, all of that. All of these actually, like, they're sort of viewed as criticisms of feminism, or this idea that, like, oh, well, women aren't always at the disadvantaged position. Sometimes men are, and I think that's true. But that's the thing, like that's all part of what the patriarchy is. It's not about men versus women or anything like that. It's about the structure that's kind of pitting us against each other.
the military thing is so interesting to me from our Jewish friends, because I have always been, my ex is Jewish, and when I found out his grandmother fought with you help me say it's the Haganah, what is it? Like the Israeli army. I have family in the military, and I was always like, that is so cool. Like I've always had this like fantasy. I'm a lover, not a fighter, but like that was never like an option really pushed to me. And I know so many women who, one of my good friends, she was one of the first women in the Navy. And it is amazing, but it's like that's a privilege that women have fought for. So this idea that that's an inherent privilege to not, or like, to not be drafted is weird to me.
Yeah, I'd rather no one gets drafted, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, this is great. I love having this conversation. I like hearing all these perspectives because I think most people really want to build a better world, and we're just in disagreement about how to do that. And we don't get this opportunity to talk and to understand where we're all coming from. And I think when we do, it makes us all stronger.
And that's where the creative solutions come from. When we come together, we can find common ground solutions creatively.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. This is amazing. You ladies are so amazing. You're smart. You're beautiful, beautiful souls. And I'm so honored to be in your presence right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, who wants to get drinks?
I can't believe they just called me such a beautiful soul. All right, well, wow. I can't believe it's actually over. That's Conservatives and Progressives Debate Feminism. They didn't say that, I just read the title. They didn't even say that it was Conservative and Progressive Women Debate Feminism. Are they the only ones that can speak on the topic? I do not think so. Clearly, I just spoke on it, and I'm going to continue to speak on controversial controversial topics like this for the next foreseeable future. I can't see when I would ever stop doing my streams or speaking like this. I think that there are lots of different things that we can talk about, and lately I have been getting into a lot of different, controversial topics, because like I had said previously, I'm just really not happy with the current way that the media is going, I guess. And so that was interesting. I think that it was strange that it was all women and it was just me speaking with them, but it was only one male perspective, I guess. But other than that, I think that it wasn't too bad. There will definitely be more interesting and, I guess, topics that I can, from a leftist point of view, have a mindset from. I don't know what to say. As you can see, black conservatives debate black liberals on American politics. I don't know. I did the one stream before. We only got halfway through, and I was really tired. I started that stream about 2 o'clock in the morning, and so we didn't finish it, but it was interesting. We may go dive back into that. But I can tell you right now, there are so many interesting things that I want to talk about. And so I'm going to run through just a few real quick with you guys here. You'll get a deep dive. And let me know if... actually, you know what? You know what the worst thing is? When somebody tells you they're going to do something like this and tell you something, give you some secret information, and then they just don't give it to you. So I'm not going to give you the information. You're going to have to stick around and wait for it to come out. Some longer, in-depth videos. But later this evening, I think I'm going to stream again. Do another little stream like this where we just talk about whatever is happening. We're going to find a new debate, a new topic to talk about. Not this one. We've already done that. Not this one. We've already... Well, that's just right there. I'm just not going to do either of these. Maybe not even a Vice debate. But if you have any ideas, drop them in the comments below, and we'll definitely get into it. It's 7 o'clock now. Maybe about 4 hours from now, I'll drop back in and we'll do another live stream. But I don't know. I think that that's probably going to be it for this evening. And yeah, I enjoyed hanging out with you guys this afternoon, and we will be back. So if you liked what you saw, make sure to do all that social media stuff and whatnot. If you didn't see, Streamlabs is the site that you can donate through that allows you to have your opinion broadcast on the screen. So later on this evening, when I have the next stream coming up, you can do that if you'd like to have your opinion heard by everybody else. So, with that being said, my name's Elder. This was The Open Debate, and be your own hero, kids.
TunaBeats.com